And here we go with friend of the channel, Umar Johnson, who
More.
has some thoughts on people who are sexually promiscuous being mentally abused or traumatized. So, according to Umar Johnson, he says emotionally damaged people are always sexually promiscuous. Umar is a friend of the channel. At this point, we've talked about him several times here on the Conscious Approach channel on YouTube. Here is another example. We thought that these were interesting comments that Umar shared during a recent appearance on on a podcast. And so here we go. Umar Johnson believes that emotionally damaged people are sexually promiscuous. So a word to the wise for all of you IG models and strippers and born stars and OnlyFans people out there.
Damn.
Yeah.
Emotionally damaged people are always sexually promiscuous. Let me say this again. If you are traumatized, if you are emotionally damaged, you are promiscuous. And do you want to know why?
Why is that?
Emotionally traumatized people require constant validation from others.
Mm.
You married to a woman who's been traumatized, abuse, abandonment, whatever. When you're not around her for too many days, she has to because her trauma dictates constant validation. And constant validation means I must have a man in my personal space. Listen, you ever date a woman who was crazy about you? She absolutely loved you, so you thought. It was really addiction.
Yeah. Oh no.
When you finally let her go, when you finally got her to stop stalking you, she ended up with another man like that. And your ego took a hit. You said, wait a minute. I know that woman was crazy about me. Climbed in my window, came to my... You understand? She was... She was crazy about your presence in her life. And the minute you distance yourself from her life, she found a replacement without a problem. Emotionally damaged people are promiscuous because they cannot go without constant validation.
They need that validation.
They need it. Most of our promiscuous women are damaged women. They're not having sex because they love having sex. They're having sex because they have learned this is the only way I can get a man's attention.
I swear, man, this guy should have his own comedy special. He got a brick wall behind him now. He should have his own comedy special, man. This guy.
Wowzer. So, not exactly sure that I've heard that kind of commentary before, but be that as it may, it's about seeking validation because of your trauma and emotional damage. You agree with Mr. Johnson here?
I like to stay away from always. That's a pretty, they're always promiscuous. That's not true. Some people are emotionally damaged, so they don't have sex. So the always emotionally damaged, therefore promiscuous, isn't true. However, I get where he's coming from. So, if you will, it's one of those things where not all emotionally damaged people are promiscuous, but all promiscuous people are emotionally damaged.
Yes.
I think it's the other way.
Yeah.
And so I see where he's coming from because, hey, I've been in those situations, man, where I was like, this girl can't get enough of me, But then, go around, like you say, hey, bro, you missing? Like, what's going on? I can be missing for whatever reasons. But somebody has to fill that void via text, online inboxing. I don't know. Something's going on. And, the validation fiends, they can't have enough when you're out of their presence. So I get what he's coming from with that. And he would argue that that's them being emotionally damaged. So therefore they have to seek that validation. I understand that angle. But to lump them all in that box, I would think that's a little aggressive. But
Well, he's
that's
he's an aggressive he's an aggressive he's an
he's
aggressive
an
guy.
extremist. It's either one side of the spectrum or the other. There's no in between or nuance. So he was like, "Oh, what? Oh, promiscuous. Oh, you promiscuous? Oh, yeah, no, all that stuff." So, and hey, Umar knows, man. He's been playing the field quite a bit. Jumping from city to city, staying in hotel room and hotel room, talking about polygamy with all the women who decide to come to his conferences, so he can try to see who he can diddly daddle. So I'm pretty sure he done had some chicks that he done linked with and did all this. She conscious and she all of that. She got shea butter and incense and everything, stones and crystals. And she still need validation from another Negro. So I'm pretty sure he'll go emotionally damaged, and that's probably where he's developed some of this theory through what do you call that? Empirical data and empirical studies. So what are your thoughts on Umar Johnson claiming that emotionally damaged people are all promiscuous?
I think he made the leap between emotional damage and sexual promiscuity. I think he made that leap there. I completely concur with your. He made a transitive equation that doesn't act that isn't real.
Mm-hmm.
That's a form of deductive reasoning that to me is a fallacy. I agree 100% with what you said, and I was actually going to say that it's more so a situation where all promiscuous people are emotionally damaged, but not all emotionally damaged people are promiscuous.
Right.
Similar to trying to understand the difference between like ignorance and racism. So all racist people are ignorant, but not all ignorant people are racist. That same kind of dynamic.
Right.
I that's how I think he made a transitive leap that to me doesn't wash. However, he did touch on the root of it, which is the seeking of validation. Now, I
Yeah.
do think that he was right on with that.
Mm-hmm.
I find that most people, and again, to a certain extent, like not everybody in the world is perfect. So even the most non-emotionally damaged person, I would say, there's still some hole there. There's still some aspect of who you are in some way that is lacking. And
Mm-hmm.
so you seek to fill that hole in various respects. And oftentimes we try to fill those holes with some form of validation. I do think that. So I think the crux of this is the seeking of validation. I used to like, now here's the thing though. I think that we have gotten to a point in society in which validation in and of itself has become this normal need that people seek, even whether they're emotionally damaged or not. I
Mm-hmm.
think we have gotten to a point where validation is something that people seek regardless of whether they are experiencing trauma or whether they have experienced trauma in the past. I think validation is just a drug that people need their fix of on a semi-regular basis.
Correct.
And I have, I remember like when social media first started to become a thing, back in 2004, 2005, when it was all about Facebook and MySpace, you know, and I used to, see people who just couldn't stop posting. And they would post the most random innocuous things like what they were eating, their
I
meal.
remember those
Like
days.
like to this day, I do
Oh.
not understand. And maybe this is just me being, because granted, I'll be honest, I am somebody who kind of shies away from that stuff. I don't see the need for it. I'm a utilitarian. So I don't commit to behaviors unless I know the tangible benefit that it's going to bring me.
Mm.
And so because I'm built that way, because that's the way that my brain is wired, I never understood what is the utilitarian value of posting stuff like that. Like to me, if I'm not posting something that's going to actually make me money or teach me a particular skill, what is the point of me doing this? Now, clearly, other people don't process information that way. That's a unique way that I look at the world. Not everybody is like that. Most people just post and post and post. And so, what I could never understand is why do you need to post what you ate? Or why do you need to post that you were in your car driving? Or why do you need to post that you're walking on your way to class? Or you just bought this thing, you just bought this book, let me post this that I bought this book. Like, why are you doing this stuff? Like, what is it in the brain, you know what I'm saying, that is telling you you need to document your life in this way all the time? And the people who I saw doing this stuff, were some of them emotionally damaged? Yeah. But for the most part, this was just regular people who
Mhm.
just picked up the habit of doing this on a very regular basis.
Mhm.
And it got progressive enough to the point where they were doing it all the time, because they needed to feed whatever hole they needed to feed with some form of validation by posting this stuff. And that form of validation manifested itself with the likes and the comments and the followers. That's kind of what the internet and social media has done. And so I think that emotionally damaged people who may or may not be promiscuous fall into these buckets of behavior, but you can't really pinpoint the traumatized people from the well balanced people, because everyone's doing the same thing.
Mhm.
Everyone's doing the same thing. I think that the internet has created something in people in which there is a constant need for validation, regardless of whether you're experiencing trauma or emotional damage or not. You need the likes, you need the comments, you need the followers, you need people to click the subscribe button,
Come
hit the
on.
like button,
Hey,
leave
man.
those to leave those comments.
Come on.
So I think that we are a society in general, particularly in the West, and you touch on this point pretty regularly when we touch on these various topics here, but we are a society full of consumers, people who just are gluttons for consuming as much as they can. And it's an addiction. It's like when you stick that needle in you, you come back because you're chasing that initial high. And your next high will never be as profound as the last one, but you keep sticking the needle because you're chasing the high. People keep posting, people keep doing these things. Promiscuous people keep having sex in a roundabout way because they are seeking the high that they previously experienced, albeit they'll never get to experience it. And so you're constantly chasing this thing. And I've said before, there have been psychological studies that have been done which
Mm.
show that social media activity is tantamount to drug use, because the brain releases endorphins in the same way when you use social media that the brain releases endorphins when you are hooked on addictive drugs. This has been scientifically proven. So when you're doing your posting and you're seeking your validation, when you are engaging in attention seeking behavior, which I will concur that to a certain extent being sexually promiscuous is a form of attention seeking behavior. I will concede that when you are doing these things, you're doing it because your brain is releasing a pleasurable feeling that you are going to want to try and feel again and again and again and again. So when people like your video, or when people subscribe to you or follow you on your various channels, or when people comment on your posts, you're getting a release of endorphins in your brain that's making you feel good enough to want to chase that feeling over and over and over again. And while I think that sexual promiscuity is a form of attention seeking behavior in which you are seeking that validation, I, like you, am not going to suggest that everyone who's emotionally damaged is sexually promiscuous. I think it's a matter of the individual and their various experiences. But at the end of the day, it's hard to separate emotionally damaged people from not, because we are all carrying on in some of the same ways, trying to seek attention in various respects. And social media isn't the only way. That's the example that I chose to cite because it's one of the ways that I see it most often. There's various other ways that people seek attention, for sure. Social media is one of the most profound and easily observed ways that people are doing this. But nevertheless, I think that, like you, Not everybody who's emotionally banged up is sexually promiscuous. But sure, all sexually promiscuous people are banged up. But the root of it is the seeking of validation, which manifests itself in attention seeking behavior. To me, I think that we are all seeking validation in some way, shape, or form. So I hear where he's coming from on a certain level, but I'm not going to, I'm not going to generalize it with saying that they're all sexually promiscuous. I'm not going to go that far. That's a I can't be that conclusive. I'm uncomfortable with that idea, but I will at least say that it is a form of validation that people are seeking this attention out here, and it is a real thing. This attention is a drug, and it's a form of currency too. People don't even really, in a lot of ways, it's like attention is a new form of currency, and it's trying to actually supplant actual currency, actual money. But people are seeking this attention out here, and it is a drug. And the more that they are fed, the more that they are granted the validation, the more that they are going to chase that high, just like doing dope.
Yeah, and validation seeking, as you mentioned, that's why when I was talking about it earlier, it's kind of like that's like its own kind of thing. Like I wouldn't mix these into this, you know, and because as you mentioned, validation seeking is well, it's always been around, and so you brought up the social media examples. Like social media just gave people an avenue to seek the validation that they was just trying to seek around the corner in the classroom at work. Now they could just post, and just do whatever. Some of those people still do that, Facebook or whatever. They still posting stuff, and they're literally just posting it to their peoples. Some people don't do it for the big time attention. Some people just want to share things because some people are. Because I had to think about this too for in varying degrees where some kind of post. I'm like, why are you posting this? And but there's always that person, for instance. Let's say this is the 90s. There was always that person that had a camera and always taking pictures, just documenting it. They're giving you pictures of somebody that they know, or hey, here's a picture for your wallet. Hey, whoop, whoop. So it's kind of always been. I've never been a picture taker myself, like actually taking a picture or being in a photo. But then there's people that just love to do that, and this is before the internet. And the internet just gave people this direct to consumer, if you will. Just hey, I just want to share what I got going on. So I always wrote that off as some people just wanting to share. And then there's the people who are doing it for the attention. And now those, it's like, what's happening here. But if you watch enough of those photos or videos or both, you can start to see where the emotional damage is lurking for some of these people. And so I hear his point. I feel like he's just mishmashing various things to fit his narrative of why he feels like promiscuous people are promiscuous. But he would also argue that, well, if somebody's not seeking validation in a balanced way, they're emotionally damaged. Now that's Umar.
I
You
know,
don't
I
know
know, I know,
him.
I know,
You
I
don't know
know,
him.
I know, I know.
So
That's exactly what he would. Yeah,
Umar he is an awesome swindler. Now he has people who still donate to him, and then they have the people like me who still laugh at him. You know, and for the people that still donate, the still people that buy into this stuff, you have to have a airtight game, if you will. And he's always got a caveat to any of his theories. And so if you try to object to him on that, he'll try to object to you on that standpoint. But me, I think they're a little bit separate because again, it's too much mishmash. It's you can't throw it all in a pot. A lot of these have like, two or three going on, but not all four or five. So it's like, hey man, you can't just say that everybody in this pot has all five of these things.
yeah.
So yeah, it's a little loose, but that's how Umar theories go. But overall, promiscuity has increased. In my opinion, I think the internet has given people's have given people ideas that they would not have had. Music has already been doing that. Movies have already been doing that. But these platforms and free available born online, um, yeah, is driven people out of their mind. Last thing I'll say is even when because when you young and you getting in the game, and she young, she getting in the game. Y'all trying to figure things out. So me, I'm asking, how, I didn't ask how their ex was. I guess like through conversation, it just came up about how sex was with their ex. And then some girls would just tell me that, yeah, he watched too much porn, and he was really trying to emulate the stuff that he sees on these things. Now, there's people like me who watched it and was like, okay, this is fantasy land.
Right.
So I'm not gonna bring this over here. Some girls want you to bring it over there, but most of them, hey, this was back in the day. Now, hey, bro, it's a whole new game because they done
Yeah.
seen it too. Yeah, they done seen it too. But this is back in the day when things were conservative, when girls would go, "I ain't doing that," and she meant it. You know, so these guys, they saw too much stuff. They trying to bring that stuff into the bedroom and whoop de whoop de whoop. And so for people who have people that are in this generation now, they have seen too much stuff where it's just like being promiscuous is okay. Hey, body counts, who gives a damn? Hey, whoop de whoop. Why girls gotta be hoes but guys ain't? All this rhetoric. And there's just too much stuff going on. So then there's people that may have been on the fringe in the past, but now that we fast forward to today's day and age, those people on the fringe are hopping on over to the thought side. And I speak for myself. When I'm raised in one way, but music, entertainment, and everything else, the streets is guiding me in a direction where I got to be out here, you know what I'm saying, getting EO. And if you ain't getting EO, then you out. And it's not just from guys, it's girls. Girls ain't, they didn't want to talk to me because you ain't got no O. And it's like, oh, and so as soon as I went out there and I started doing that stuff, then results increased. And then I can tell a girl that I'm dealing with a whole nother girl. I'll meet a girl and tell her I got a girlfriend. They didn't care. The whole thing is that, well, if he can get some vagina, then he can get mine.
Yeah.
Yeah. So right now, what we're witnessing is it's a melting pot of shenanigans. So you to just plump it all down into emotionally damaged, that's a big bucket, I guess. Emotional damage can be a big bucket because there's so many varying avenues that lead to people living a promiscuous lifestyle. So yeah, I hear his point, but hey man, this is the way of the world. There's a lot of this stuff going on nowadays. I've seen some of this stuff firsthand myself. There's a lot of people who grew up in traumatized households. Some people didn't have, the life that you had, and you start to see why they behave the way that they do. So there's credence to it, but it's not all the way factual, as we mentioned earlier.
Yeah, I'm fine with it from the extent that emotion, like I said, my central premise is that um people who experience some form of trauma
Mm-hmm.
are going to seek to reconcile that in some kind of way. And
Mm-hmm.
that's just human nature. We all do that.
Mm-hmm.
The manner in which you choose to reconcile that varies depending on the individual. And that method of reconciliation isn't always, you know, being loose sexually.
Mm-hmm.
There are various other manifestations in which that can take place. You can seek that refuge out, you know, in, substance abuse, alcohol, gambling. It's anything. So my whole thing with that is he named one aspect of the way that of the way that trauma manifests itself, which is being loose sexually. But to me, it's just one example, and
Right.
so that's why I think that it's a transitive property that doesn't exactly wash. You can say that about any myriad of ways that people manifest their trauma. I've seen the gamblings, the cokeheads, the alcoholics, people who are addicted to sex. Um, you know, people who just aren't responsible with spending money, eating, people who can't handle life like that, or they're dealing with trauma or something bad happened, and they're, engulfing a dozen Krispy Kreme donuts.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like, I think that all of those things factor into it. It's just not about sex, but
Right.
sex is just one of those hot topics. Everyone loves talking about it. We all love getting to the bottom of it. Sex, sex, sex. Everyone loves talking about sex. It's the most interesting topic. That's why there are so many relationship podcasts and YouTube channels on the internet, because all these things do every day is talk about sex, and they get the views because people are just interested in that. Which, I guess you can, to your point, I guess we are now at a point culturally, societally, where there's such an inundation of that kind of content that people are just desensitized to it. And I'm definitely willing to concede that for sure.
Yep.
But I think that sex is just one of those things where people are just going to naturally gravitate towards it because it's on the tip of everybody's tongues damn near all the time. Whereas things like, alcohol and substance abuse and gambling are less sexy. They're less, they deliver less cachet from a commentary standpoint, and so it's less popular to talk about those things, even though to me they're just as palpable as the example that Umar used. So yeah, I just think that it's all one giant bucket. Sex is a part of it, but there's a whole bunch of other stuff that goes into it too.
Agreed.
But shouts out to Umar once again. That's what, 2 times in the last 3 weeks where we
you got me agreeing with this, man.
brought up the king of grifters, the king of grifters. If Umar Johnson was a character in Game of Thrones, that would be his like moniker, king of grifters.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thanks for the PayPal.
Oh